Welcome to the You're Not Wrong podcast, a place where nothing is wrong, you are not wrong, and it's a continuous celebration of you and the gift you are in the world.
Welcome, everybody, to You're Not Wrong podcast. Our host today, my name is Jennifer Stevens, and I'm with Michelle Follis. And we are so excited to talk to and learn more about Michael Anders, who is actually a dear friend of mine, has been for quite a few years, and the owner of Core Health Strategies. So, Michael, would you just tell us a little bit about you and kind of share why you're on our You're Not Wrong podcast today?
Sure. So, sounds great. Thanks for having me on here and doing this. You're not wrong. Kind of funny when you first told me about the concept. I was always one of those very meticulous spellers and things, and grammatical people, and I'm like, that's wrong. You can't do that. And then I'm like, but then I got the concept. I'm like, all right, this totally makes sense, and it's really to catch people off guard and kind of really try to hit home the point. Probably some of the stuff that we'll end up talking about today. So, but anyways, so like you said, I'm Michael Anders. I opened Core Health Strategies in 2013 after prompting of many of my peers and friends, and said, you really need to do this. This is something that's your kind of your talent, your gift, and that's where everything started. So about a year ago, I moved my Core Health Strategies out of Grand Junction, Colorado, up to Pocatello, Idaho, and officially opened December 1st of 2020, and really trying to get things going. And so business is picking up. And if you know anyone in the area that wants to drive up to Pocatello for Core Health Strategy treatment, send them up this way. Still plenty of openings for that. But I'm an occupational therapist by training, and that's kind of where everything changed my life. I thought it was going to be something very, very straightforward, that this is just the kind of career you have. And but along that path, things really started to change and became something that I could never have imagined from where I started this process many years ago. I don't think we need to talk numbers, do we?
Yeah.
But I got into occupational therapy because my father had a stroke, and it left him very, very impaired functionally, and he lost his speech. He was never able to really communicate super well after that. And just seeing his recovery process is really what drew on my heartstrings and got me into this field. But then about 20 years ago, I'm throwing out numbers now, I really got into a different side of occupational therapy, where I focused on getting to the root of people's issues. Because it was always, you go to your doctor, you go to this therapist, and they try to treat all of these symptoms or fix these problems from that other point of view or perspective. And I was just like, why aren't we fixing the real root of the problem? And that's where this journey began. So I started studying Cranio-sacral therapy, Frequency Specific Microcurrent. I do active Myofascial Release, a technique called Cranio-biotic. I integrate something called Access Consciousness, just bringing all of these things together with my OT skills and OT training to create what Core Health Strategies is today. And that's really the heart of who I am, and where part of the process of getting to where I am at today, and what we're doing up here in Pocatello, Idaho now.
Awesome. So like looking at your, even like the last 10 years, I think was one of the questions we had. What do you wish you would have known 10 years ago? And not just professionally, even personally. Yeah. Like this is, the conversations that we're having. I really would love to know, like, how has judgment, shaped who you are today? Like, that's really what you're not wrong, like, we're just asking, like, how much fun can we have talking about what is not wrong?
Sure. It's a great question. And it's one of those things I think that, through the years and decades and centuries, philosophers have probably done the same thing. They were like, wow, if I would have known this 10 years ago, how would my life be differently? The quick answer to that is always, well, I had to go through all those things to get to where I'm at today and learn and all those things. However, in the last, say, 3 years or so, what I've learned has helped me refocus what I would have loved to have known 10 years ago. And so, you use the word judgment, and what does judgment do in our lives? And for me, judgment was crippling. It crippled who I was and who I had the potential to be. And I really couldn't see beyond that. I couldn't see beyond what I judged myself to be or not to be, and what I thought other people might judge me to be or not be, based on whether I was a good enough therapist, or whether I was a good enough spouse at the time, or a father or brother, or any of those kinds of things. And it was always about, here's the bar. And I always felt like I was down here. I could never achieve this. And it all came from that point of judgment where I just felt I wasn't good enough and couldn't express myself. But I would say that if 10 years ago I would have known what I know now about judgment, and being able to just erase that and say, it's really not about me being better or less or greater than, or any of those kinds of things. It's just about me getting to be me. That would have changed things a whole lot. Specifically, about 3 years ago, I started my process of divorce. And I was married for, at that time, 24 years and 3 children, 3 amazing children, beautiful and wonderfully talented and everything. But part of all of that time period was me judging myself and feeling like I couldn't allow the true self of who I was to come out because of the judgments that I've had on myself, or thought of the other people had about me. So I went through the divorce, and part of that process, I came out and was able to express myself as being a gay man. And that was something that, now I'm 52. Here we go, throwing numbers out. For all of my life, I kind of knew this underlying, and I just couldn't accept that and let it be a part of who I was, because of the judgments of what I thought my family would want, or my church would want, the religious community, those kinds of things, friends, all that. But in this process, that's really become one of the most challenging and most rewarding things in my life, is being able to say, okay, this is really who I am, and allowing the judgment to go away, or at least to address it and to confront it and say, well, I can either live this way the rest of my life, and I was very much miserable, or I could turn that page in my book of my life and actually start to live the greatest life that I've had so far. And that's where I'm at now. And so I guess, yeah, 10 years ago, that's what I would have loved to have known, or to have that ability to handle that in a way that I didn't start doing until the last couple of years.
Wow. That's very courageous.
Yeah. It's been an incredibly challenging road, but in a lot of other ways, it's been one of the most loving, accepting experiences of my life. It really has. And, I integrate that into what I do at Core Health Strategies as well, because people can come into the clinic with their stuff. And just this week, I had a new person that came in and had some very challenging emotional things that had happened over the last couple of years that really relate to their current health issues and the pain they're struggling with. But I'm able to say, you know what, there's no judgment in this room. And when you walk into this clinic, you get to be you. And I will accept that for what it is, because I'm here just to be that vessel to try to help you navigate through this part of your process. And so that was not me 10 years ago, because the same person could have walked in 10 years ago and I would have been, oh no, we can't talk about that, and I have too many judgments about this, or no. But now, and it's very sensitive information, very sensitive things that have happened to this person to get them to where they're at. And but they were able to have very frank and open conversations, and you could see their body just go from this very rigid, I don't want to talk about things, to by the end they're laughing and joking, but they were feeling better already. So it's something that I really have brought into the practice, as well as doing all the other things that I mentioned earlier, to help people get to that point where they're like, you know, I can have freedom. I can have freedom from pain. I can have freedom from the emotional turmoil. I can just be me. So
one of the things that I love that you said at the beginning, you were talking about how your practice has to do with going to the root, like getting to the root of whatever it is. And then when you just shared your story, it was getting to the root of that thing. And how many of us have had that thing where it's like we actually know what it is that's causing like the pain or the discomfort or the angst or the upset or the thing that is the root for us, whatever that is, what's real and true for us. But yet, because what you shared, it's the judgments, it's being afraid of what other people are going to think about us, let alone then piling all that crap on top of our heads of our own judgment, that it just becomes this thing of, and I'm just speaking for myself, of, you know, where you just have, it's like always there. It can like eat you up in your life because you feel like you just can't be you. And yet when you chose that, can you talk a little bit more about how you said it's like, and this wasn't exactly what you said, but you said something like it's like been the best time and some difficult times at the same time. But you know, like I remember when I graduated from college and the last day, because I hated college, I just was like, felt so much relief. Like, was there that when it finally just sort of came out and you just made the choice to do something different?
absolutely. You know, you said something very interesting about how it kind of eats at you and eats you alive type of thing. And really that's a lot of what was going on a little over 3 years ago. Was I started having health issues, and I know enough and have done enough work in kind of the Eastern medicine types of things to understand that the issues I were having were like emotional things that were tied up in things like my liver and gallbladder kinds of symptoms, because I was starting to have skin issues, and like literally my skin was getting really hard and I was having rashes and things that were just like, this is not me. And what it really ended up being was just all that emotional stuff that's been tied up for decades, just being, you know, shoved down and stuffed back. So yeah, part of the process for me has been not only am I healing physically and just allowing my body to actually go, okay, I don't have to choose this anymore. I can actually choose health and happiness and that sort of thing. But then the opportunity and the doors have opened for these amazing people to come. Yeah.
Okay.
Amazing people that have come into my life that have not only loved and supported me unconditionally and wholly, but they've helped me to see my worth and my value, and to help me get over those judgments that I've had for all of those decades, for all of those years. And so now I just, one of the most amazing things is my relationships with those people are not only grown but they're authentic. For the first time in my life, I get to have these authentic relationships, and we get to talk about whatever is going on in our lives, and those people are also kind of in that space of they're not judging all of the stuff and the things that we all used to maybe hold on to, and I'm like, oh well, we can't talk about that, you know, that sort of thing. But it's become very, very healthy, and but also very, very rewarding to have those kinds of relationships in my life now too. And that's where things really changed. And so I would say that the way that I used to run core health strategies before 3 years ago compared to the way I run it now, and the things I integrate and bring into it, it's a completely different experience for people, because I just have a different view of what's going on with people's bodies, and I can open up that space for them to listen to their bodies, even at a deeper emotional level, to try to really get to that root source of what's going on. Because a lot of times our emotional status is really what drives a lot of our pain in our bodies. And so that's why traditional OT, PT kinds of things don't work so well, because that's not usually something that we're able to address.
Yeah.
So.
I've known Mike quite a few years, knew him before, and have had the honor of spending some really fabulous time since he's chosen to be him, showing up as being him, more of him, and just dynamically the changes in like just how you heal and how you interact and just, you know, how you just show up in the world. For me, I've just seen this, it's almost like this blossoming of who your true essence, your true vulnerability, even just like thank you for having this conversation with us, and you know, and just being willing to share that, and what can that create for other people, you know, and
Yeah.
that's really what we are all about here is looking at like how can we share some of these really amazing stories with just beautiful, wonderful people.
Yeah.
So one of the questions that I have was what are some of the healthy daily activities, things, what are some things that you're using or have you used to just create this space, this change for you?
How long do we have?
I love it.
Well, it generally starts off with going to the gym in the mornings, just really looking at things that I had so I'm a therapist, but I had so much judgment about what it meant to go into a gym and to be a closeted gay man. And I couldn't go to the gym. I was terrified of going to the gym all of my life. And so I never went. And I hated gym class in high school. So the last gym class I ever took was freshman year of high school because it was mandatory. But it was one of the most fearful kinds of experiences for me. And so through this whole process, you know, I now have a support system that supports that and helps that happen. So anyways, we start off with the gym in the morning. And so that's really, really great. But also learning things about myself, about how to take care of my body, how do I take care of my skin, how do I take care of the insides of my body. So learning about nutrition in a different perspective. And so making homemade bone broth that I eat daily to help with my glow, because, you know, I have this glow now that
You look fabulous. Fabulous.
Well, thanks. But it is, there's a lot to that kind of nutrition. But homemade bone broth is great. I do intermittent fasting. So I'm usually eating one meal a day, and, you know, try to start that around, you know, between like 6 and 8 o'clock at night would be the time frame that I'm eating a lot of times. I failed today, but it's not a failure because I'm not wrong, but just chose differently. But that's another aspect of things I do. Integrating access consciousness, which is a technique that Jen introduced me to about 2.5 years ago as I was going through the divorce process, which was very, very really life-changing to me. It literally changed my life. And I didn't even understand the impact of it until about 8 or 10 months later, 9 months later, when some of the things that happened during that session showed up in my life in a way that I never could have expected or imagined. It was just incredibly crazy. But I utilize those kinds of things every day to clear and release, you know, the judgments that I have and the fears, because not only did I have judgments, but I was so frozen by all of those judgments and the fears of everything, I didn't function very well. And so access has become an integral part of what I do personally to change my day-to-day life. Of course, I'm usually running microcurrents and doing those kinds of things as well, staying in touch with, and developing really good, healthy relationships with people in my life. And so there's a certain core group of people that I'm pretty much in contact every day of my life now. Just checking in with each other, how you doing, making sure everybody's moving forward, and just taking care of that piece of who we are. One thing I'm working on is like the meditation part, because I'm not really good with quiet times. But used to, I would be going, nonstop for 18 to 20 hours a day. But that was my coping strategy. That was my survival strategy. And so now I'm actually sleeping more. So I'm getting, between 7 and 8 hours of sleep a night, which I haven't done that for 20 years, realistically. So things like those are the kinds of core things that I'm changing and bringing into my life now to create something that's greater and to keep me healthier as well. And I think I'd be remiss if I didn't just say that, I have been given one of the most amazing relationships that I've ever had in my entire life. And that, if you've ever looked up what twin flames are, I have a twin flame in my life now, and that's the most rewarding, supportive relationship I've ever had. And it's, if it weren't for that, it's like, that's another part of who I've been fortunate enough to find and have into my life. And, but that's another, it's just another part of my daily thing that makes me who I am and allows me to be who I am.
Love that.
I love that too. And I hate to say that, I think we're going to be running out of time here.
Okay.
But if I may, just like, one of the things that I love so much about this conversation and about all of this conversation, and we're good, by the way, is that if there was no judgment, like the bright light that you be, like just seeing like it's like the dimming. There are so many of us, and all of us in some way, shape, or form, there's some part of us probably that is still dimmed way down compared to the magic and the gift that we are here to be on this planet, in this lifetime, in this world. And when we ourselves have the courage not to judge other people, not to make things personal, but just to allow people to choose the life that they know is just what is real and true for them. It's like we get to have this planet filled with amazing people sharing their gifts. And I just like, that's to me what this part of what this whole "you're not wrong" thing is to inspire people to be that in the world on both sides of the fence.
Yeah. I think, looking at just like the inspiration you've been, Mike, to me personally, is just even when you were talking about, just like taking that step to come out as a gay man, like that takes so much courage. And it's just one of those things that just like, wow, wow, if you can do that, then what can I choose? What can I step into that I might be like hanging on to or hiding or, not allowing to show up because I'm afraid of judgment or hurting someone's feelings or, like that people are going to leave my life, all of that. And it's just interesting how, like, can you speak just a little bit about like what has created this expansion, this greatness in your world? Like, like you have somebody in your life now, and you've moved and you've created a whole new clinic, and you're healing in a whole different way, personally, and the bodies that you are working with. So if we look at that, like what is your biggest "you're not wrong" moment, and what did you learn from it? Like, where was that big aha, I'm not wrong, I'm stepping in?
Yeah. You know, so there's a couple of thoughts that come to mind with that. One of them was I was sitting in a class with one of my mentors, and she was talking, okay, I'm going to get all nerdy on it, but she was talking about the vagus nerve and how the vagus nerve helps us with, it's kind of our fight or flight response, because everybody knows about fight or flight. We know that we've heard that through school or from our friends of, something happens in our life. We're being chased by a tiger, and we're either going to run away from it, or we're going to try to stand there and fight it. But the other part of it that came out in that class that for the first time I really, really heard was it also controls the freeze. And so we get frozen. And I was frozen in my life because of the fears and the judgments and the things that I put on my life. And so that was one of those first moments that I was like, well, no wonder I couldn't make a choice, because I was frozen. And I couldn't move forward. Because I was so afraid of the what ifs and who I was going to lose. Really, it was going to be who might I lose from my life. It was what I was more concerned about at that point, because, society has changed. It's very different than it was, when I was, in my early 20s and making life choices. And so that was one of those defining moments. The other one that comes to mind was that session that I had with you, Jen, because it's going to get weird. So I'm just going to say it, because you're not wrong, right?
You're not wrong.
But there was something that happened in that session, and I just told Jen, I'm like, Jen, my grandfather just showed up. And she's like, cool. I'm like, I never met him. He's dead. I'm like, he died before I was ever born. I'm like, this is kind of weird for me. But it wasn't like a hallucination. It wasn't anything like that. It was just almost like this energetic connection through the spiritual realm, whatever your belief system is. But he said, I'm here, I'm with you, I'm going to be with you. And these issues that you're worrying about are going to be okay. And these people are going to come back into your life. But very soon you're going to get the ability to heal people in a way that you've never done before. And he says, you're going to get that ability when you get to this beach. And he gave me, and there was this vision of a beach. And I researched the beach for months afterwards. I'd be online, and if I had free time, I'm looking at pictures of beaches around the world, because I had no clue where it was. I knew it was tropical. There was some palm trees, but I'm just not sure where the beach was. But that's about 8-9 months later is when I met Joe, and he's Filipino, and his story was that we were like, he's a physical therapist, I'm an occupational therapist. And he said, well, I told him that I wanted to travel in life. That was one of my great desires, was to travel, because I really hadn't traveled and I have so much I want to see and do. And he says, wow, well, my parents just opened an Airbnb in the Philippines about 5 months ago. I'm like, oh, that'd be great. We should go see it sometime. A couple of days later, I'm in my clinic back in Grand Junction, and one of my clients, she knew the whole story, and she's like, so what happened? How'd everything go? I told her about the beach or the Airbnb in the Philippines, and she stopped me and she's like, Mike, is that Airbnb in the jungle part of the Philippines, or is it on the beach side? And I was like, I have no clue. But immediately when she said that, I knew what she meant. And so I sent Joe a text. I'm like, do you have a link to your parents' Airbnb? And by the time I was done treating her, the picture or the link came through, and we clicked on it. The fourth picture in was the beach that Grandpa showed me in the session that I had with Jen 8-9 months earlier. I remember the session was in May, and this was the end of December, beginning of January. And the interesting thing that I skipped over was a few weeks before that, the first time that Joe and I had any kind of interaction was via text. And I was in San Antonio, Texas, and he was in Idaho Falls, Idaho. He was sick, super sick, never been this sick in his life. Probably was the, early COVID, because he had those symptoms. He's like, I never get sick, and I'd never been that sick in my life. But I had reconnected with one of my doctor friends down in San Antonio for a conference that I was at. And so, some people would be like, well, it's kind of just by coincidence she started talking about, but no, it was supposed to be. She started telling me about her grandmother, who used to be a distance healer, and how she would get messages from around the world that this person needed treated or healed, and she would do this work energetically around the world and treat them. And so when Joe told me how sick he was, I just texted back and I said, well, I can heal you. And I'd never done that before. Well, he immediately got better. Like, the symptoms he was having resolved when I worked on him energetically across those hundreds or thousands of miles, however far that is. And that was the start of the whole thing that Grandpa had said, you'll get the ability to heal people in a way you've never done it before. And at the time, I only thought it was just the energetic work, like across the miles, because Joe and I have now, since then, we work together to do energetic healings for people around the world. And we've treated people in Great Britain and the Philippines and Dubai and, around the United States. But I also think that was part of what your question's asking, is where did it kind of turn the page for me? And it was like, now in my clinic space, now I'm able to do that same kind of healing and support people through whatever they're going through, because now I don't see them as being wrong. They're not broken. It's just more of let's fix people from that root source. So.
Wow. Amazing. That's an amazing story. I love it.
Live my life.
Yeah.
It's been crazy fun.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
For people out there who are listening, who maybe have just sort of made a big choice in their life, or are thinking about making a big choice in their life, and they are kind of, in that space of wondering what people are going to think, or the judgment that's coming up, do you have any tips or things that you could share with folks, that ways in which you've interacted with people that maybe have judged you, or where it's been fairly difficult in relationships? Can you share what's worked for you, or what do you know?
Sure. I would say that one thing is, I think if you're just open to connecting and just putting it out there, I was to the point that I'm like, I just need to become me. I need to be me. And that's when I would say, even a couple of years, so maybe even 5 years ago, some of those key relationships came into my life that allowed me to be authentic with them and open up and say, here's what's going on. Here's something I'm really struggling with. And I'm to a point in my life, I have to do something about it, because it's killing me. It's making me sick. And so through that process, those people became kind of those liaisons that they would be sounding boards. But I don't think they would have ever showed up if I didn't just put it out there, kind of like crying out to the universe, like, I'm going to change. I need to change. I need to stop judging myself. I need to whatever. And I think that if people get to that point in their life where they can just at least put it out there and acknowledge it, that those people are going to start showing up in their lives, so that they have that support system, so that they have the people that they can, and it may not be 10 people, it may just be 1 or 2 people. And that's what comes to mind is, there were 2 people that I could go to and talk to and just be completely authentically honest with them about things. And they were just like, hey, what are you going to choose now? How are you going to make a difference in moving forward and creating your happiness and allowing things to become what they need to be, just so that you can shine your light and do what you're supposed to do on this planet. So I think that's one of the biggest things, is just put it out there and be open and listen and let those people in, because I was to the point I had to let them in. I was so miserable. Some people maybe aren't to that point, but I'd lived with this for over 40 years. The secret that you held inside, it's like, I just couldn't do it anymore. And maybe the number thing is something that was pressing the issue too, because I have lost, I told you a little bit earlier, I'm 52. I had a brother that died at 57. My dad died at 59 and my mom died at 61. And so I was like, the time clock is really clicking. And even though my lifestyle is extremely different than what theirs were, it's still a number. And so sometimes we judge numbers even. And I was like, I'm either going to be one of those numbers and I'm going to die very, very young, or at least I have a chance of changing that and choosing a different outcome for myself. And I think that's really, even with all the fears and things, that's really what happened. Is it just had to become something that I had to choose something different. So it's possible, yeah, there's going to be judgment. There's going to be people out there that aren't going to be on your side, but there are more people willing to be on your side than what you realize. And they'll kind of, once you find those people or you start sharing your story with them and being open, they're going to come into your life, and then they'll be more supportive than you ever thought imaginable, because that's what I found.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us, and for the change that you are in the world.
Yes.
And that invitation of just being you. That's pretty courageous. And I adore you. I'm honored to call you my friend. And yeah, anything else, Michelle?
No, I'm very grateful as well to have you on the show and to be having these conversations. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of magic in this interview. So hopefully, yeah, there's a lot of magic in this interview. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, ladies, for having me. And I love the concept. You're not wrong. I love it. So this is going to change a lot of people's lives for the good. So thank you for having me on here, and let me be one of your guests.
Thank you for listening. Our target is to celebrate what it is that makes us different. If you enjoyed this podcast, please like it and share it with your friends. And stay in touch at yournotwrong.com.